What if I told you that destiny does not begin with confidence, but with interruption? What if I told you that the voice that changes history often comes when your life feels hidden, forgotten, and small? Because the greatest deliverer Israel would ever know did not begin as a hero. He began as a child marked for death. Egypt was powerful, immovable, eternal in its own eyes. Its monuments scraped the heavens, its armies crushed resistance, and its king ruled like a god among men. But beneath its glory lived a secret fear. The Hebrews were multiplying. They were slaves, but they were growing. Pharaoh did not fear who they were. He feared who they might become. Fear makes tyrants cruel. And so he issued a decree that echoed like thunder through the land. Every Hebrew boy must die, not because of something they had done, but because of something they carried: potential, promise, threat. And into that atmosphere of fear, a child was born. His name was Moses. His mother held him in trembling arms, knowing every breath he took was borrowed time. She could not protect him forever. Love alone could not stop soldiers. Love alone could not silence Pharaoh. So she made a choice that must have shattered her heart. She placed him into a basket. She sealed it, and she released him into the Nile. The river that had become a grave for Hebrew sons became the path that would carry a deliverer. Because when God writes a story, even the instruments of death become vessels of destiny. The basket drifted between reeds and shadows, carried by a current that did not understand the weight it held. And then it stopped, not in darkness, but in the presence of royalty. Pharaoh's daughter saw the basket. She heard the cry, and something unexpected stirred inside her. Not political calculation, but compassion. She lifted the child from the water. In that moment, the decree of death collided with the mercy of heaven. The child marked for execution was adopted into the house of his enemy. He was raised in Pharaoh's palace. He wore the clothing of royalty. He ate the food of kings. He walked corridors his people could never enter. But identity is not erased by environment. Somewhere deep inside him lived a knowing he could not explain. He was Hebrew. He was not fully Egyptian. He lived between two worlds. Privilege surrounded him, but purpose disturbed him. One day, as a grown man, he walked beyond the palace walls and saw what he had spent his life avoiding. A Hebrew slave, beaten, crushed, humiliated. Something inside him ignited. Not trained, not planned. Instinct, justice, calling. He looked left, he looked right. No witnesses, no hesitation. He struck the Egyptian. The man collapsed, still, silent, dead. And in that moment, Moses crossed a line he could never uncross. He had acted without instruction, without timing, without God's command. He had tried to fulfill destiny through human strength, and now he would pay the price. Pharaoh heard, and Pharaoh did not see a prince, he saw a threat. Moses ran. He left the palace. He left Egypt. He left behind identity, security, and certainty.
He entered the wilderness, the place where ambition dies, the place where ego dissolves, the place where God rebuilds a man from nothing. Years passed, not weeks, not months, years, decades. 40 years of silence, 40 years of obscurity, 40 years of watching sheep instead of ruling nations.
The man who once walked marble halls now walked endless sand. The man who commanded attention now lived unnoticed. The world had forgotten him, but heaven had not, because God does his deepest work in hidden seasons. God strips away what you were so he can reveal who you are. And then, one day, everything changed. It was an ordinary day. No thunder, no warning, just sheep, just dust, just routine. Until he saw it, a bush, burning, fire consuming its branches, and yet it was not turning to ash. It burned, but it was not destroyed. It was impossible. It was holy. Moses stepped closer. Curiosity pulled him forward, but something deeper held him in place. And then a voice spoke from within the fire. Moses! This was not imagination. This was encounter. He answered the only way a human can answer eternity. Here I am. And God spoke words that would shatter Moses' quiet existence forever. I have seen the suffering of my people. I have heard their cries. I have come down to deliver them. And I am sending you. Silence filled the space between heaven and earth. This was the moment, the turning point, the invitation. And Moses argued, not because he was rebellious, because he was afraid. Who am I? He asked. Who am I to stand before Pharaoh? Who am I to confront the most powerful empire on earth? Who am I to carry something this heavy? He was no longer a prince. He was a shepherd. He was no longer confident. He was broken. God did not answer Moses with explanation. He answered him with presence. I will be with you. But Moses was not finished arguing. What if they do not believe me? God responded with power. The staff in his hand became a serpent. His hand became diseased and healed again. Water became blood. Heaven was proving a point. Authority does not come from the man. It comes from God. Still, Moses resisted. I am not eloquent. I am slow of speech. In other words, I am not enough. And God answered with truth that echoes across generations. Who made man's mouth? Who made your voice? Who made your weakness? Who made you? God was not asking Moses to be capable. He was asking Moses to be willing. There is a difference. Capability depends on man. Willingness makes room for God. Finally, Moses stopped arguing, not because his fear disappeared, but because obedience rose above it. He accepted the call. He accepted the burden. He accepted the unknown. The shepherd would return to Egypt, not as a fugitive, as a deliverer, not with an army, with a staff, not with confidence in himself, with dependence on God. He began the journey back toward the place he once fled. Every step forward was an act of faith. Every step forward was a declaration of surrender.
He did not know how it would unfold. He did not know what resistance awaited him. He only knew that the God who called him was walking with him, and that was enough. Because destiny does not begin when you feel ready. It begins when you say yes. The burning bush still burns. The voice still calls. Not the perfect, not the fearless, but the willing. And the question is not whether God is calling. The question is whether you will stop arguing long enough to answer. Because history is changed by those who say, "Here I am."